What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Young Rich Podcast. Today, I am once again joined by my boy Seth. Say what's up to the people, Seth.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Boom, my boy is back with me again. We had a banger first video, I thought, so obviously I had to bring him on more. So he's definitely going to be on this channel consistently with me, which I appreciate. We are currently in the works of working on doing an in-person podcast, which would be very fun for me. Haven't done many of those, and to do one with a guy like Seth who knows ball like that would be just a lot of fun in general. So looking forward to that. We'll be planning that stuff in the future. But in today's episode, we're going to be discussing a little bit of the NBA, a little bit of the FIBA Olympic basketball going on right now. Can the Boston Celtics repeat? And then we'll be getting into NFL football to end off today's video. But first topic of discussion, I did want to discuss it. He's been going viral everywhere. In high school already, he's been going viral on his Team USA Select Team performance. But I got to talk about Cooper Flagg for a second. I mean, listen, this guy's already seen his projected #1 overall pick of his class next year. Hasn't even enrolled at Duke yet, right? But we've seen the clips of, him performing against Team USA, shooting that pull-up three right in front of AD's face, his relentless effort coming back, chase block, closing out. And it's just his overall performance and his skill set, and you've seen the AD, KD, and LeBron talk about very highly of Cooper Flagg. And, you've already seen people on social media putting hashtag capture the flag, this is somebody who we have high expectations for. There's already teams preparing to tank for Cooper Flagg. You got teams like the Wizards, the Bulls, who just moved off Derozan, who are in that sweepstakes for Cooper Flagg. But I just wanted to discuss what are your thoughts on Cooper Flagg, and what do you like from what you saw from him in the Team USA Select performance?
Yeah, I mean, just the competitiveness. I mean, him being so young and competing. A lot of guys, there's a big difference between like guys who they'll go out and they'll compete against like Team USA, and the guys that are starting and the bigger guys, and guys that'll just be like plug and play, are just like happy they got the opportunity and stuff. But obviously Cooper was given the opportunity and he excelled. He like stepped up to the occasion, and he's like, if I'm gonna be here, I'm not just gonna lay down to these guys. I'm gonna put it to them. But it's awesome just like seeing him on Team USA. I feel like it's one of those things where like we haven't been seeing that more recently. Obviously, it's been a while since the last Olympics, and then before that there was like COVID and stuff, so it was a lot different. But like having younger guys like this that aren't in the NBA yet on Team USA, like LeBron was on Team USA when he was like super, super young. I don't know how it's like structured or anything, but just the fact that Cooper gets like the experience from playing with these guys on Team USA, that is huge in and of itself. And then also just like being able to go out there and compete at an NBA level, at like NBA practices with all these huge guys, even prior to even going to college, like it's huge. This guy's like literally, I mean, like he's gonna ball out at Duke. It's gonna be really exciting to watch him. And like he's kind of like a mixture of like a shorter version of Giannis defensively, but yet he has like the wing and guard skills of kind of like a Paul George, Jason Tatum hybrid. And then like a lot of his post up game, like I'm seeing just the way he works in the post and also just in the paint when he's kind of isolated down there. It reminds me a lot of Franz Wagner from the Magic too. So it's literally like a mix of like literally some of like the best guys in the NBA that I'm seeing in Cooper Flagg's game. And he's like so young that it's just going to be really exciting. You know what they always say, like iron sharpens iron, things like that. So like obviously a guy like Cooper getting the huge thing is the experience in like the Team USA. Even if I highly doubt he doesn't get any playing time in some of the games, because I'm sure we'll play like a team that we absolutely blow out by like 60 or 70. And he'll probably get some playing time. I don't know if he got any playing time in the first game. I don't think he did at all.
That Team USA Select Team is like, it's just basically a practice team. So you go out there and you just practice, which is why they've done it before, where they pull up guys from college, but just this is not likely. Like
that makes sense. That makes more sense.
Even when I heard, exactly. Even when I heard that Cooper Flagg was getting pulled up for the select team, I'm not gonna lie. At first, I was like, "Damn, that's kind of crazy," because there's some other guys I'm sure that could have used that type of experience. But the fact that he went out here and performed, it's not like they were playing with the best young players in the NBA either. They had Jalen Duren, you had Amen Thompson, you had James, the shooting guard from the Warriors, who I can't remember his name right now, but you had this second. You didn't have like superstars out there, you know. So the fact that he went out there, took over, and he even said the scrimmage, you know, they lost by the last second shot, you know. So to see something like that is crazy, and you know. For I know a lot of these lower tier teams, you know, I seen all over social media, all these fan pages, Spur fan pages, you know, like don't let Wembanyama get Cooper flag, you know, because that I mean
That would be insane.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? To see a guy like that come in and just dominate against the best defenders in the NBA, you know, is something that you just got to tip your hat to, you know, because again, that's something that looking on the outside going in, I wasn't sure how he was going to do. I thought maybe that was a little too much pressure, but clearly his confidence was there. And the biggest thing I liked about that entire thing is he was showing, like you said, relentless effort and wasn't really like, you know, trying to talk shit or trying to, talk and rah do all that stuff. He was just out there working on his game, making some buckets, making some big time plays, which is something I like from a future superstar, you know. So that's definitely something great to see. But the second topic of discussion is obviously the Boston Celtics, right? The Boston Celtics, you just extended your 5 key players to this core. Jason Tatum got that 5-year, $313 million extension. Jalen Brown also got his 5-year, $304 extension. You extended Drew Holiday for 4 years. Derek White just got paid again like the elite two-way player he is. KP, you extended him earlier this season. You know, you're running it back. You are a second apron team. You have very little wiggle room. And this is so important because this is an era of basketball where you don't typically see like back-to-back champions. You know, you haven't seen that since these dominant teams, you know, like the Miami Heat, LeBron James teams, you know, that, and like the dominant Lakers, Kobe and Shaq era. You know, you haven't seen a team go back-to-back. The Denver Nuggets was that team that everybody thought was going to do it, was going to be a team to go back-to-back, and obviously they didn't even make it to the finals, you know. So I mean, I still believe there are some flaws to this team, you know, specifically with Jason Tatum, his ability just not to show up for the big moments. But one of the things I can see happening is that now that Jason Tatum finally has his championship, I mean, and this entire team as well, you know, you pray you get good health from KP. Drew Holiday, again, he showed you he can be a reliable number 3, number 4 scoring option on offense, and he can still give you that elite defense that you've been asking for. And Derek White, that same situation, he can be that number 3 scorer, that number 4 scorer. He could also be a great playmaker, just a dynamic player, but his defensive effort is what you need so much. But I think Jason Tatum can be one of these guys where now that you've won your championship, now that you've got that out the way, you know, your bad performances in the finals, it doesn't matter no more. You're an NBA champion, right? You got this super max contract, and now you have the chance to go out here and just forget about all that. And I hopefully, you know, he's able to elevate his performance in the playoffs, you know, because we've seen him have monster games. You know, it's just that once you get to the big moments, you know, the finals, they just have not been so pretty. So I do think having already won an NBA championship is going to allow you to, you know, be stress free, you know, not be worried about critics, not being worried about people after one bad game or 2 awful games, be like, oh, Jason Tatum is not going to be that guy in the NBA championship, right? He's not going to be the number 1 option. He's not going to be this dominant version that we see in the regular season. It doesn't translate into the NBA championships for him. And if you can get a Boston Celtics team where Jason Tatum is playing like Jason Tatum, that we all know that people are saying is a top 5, top 8 NBA player, you know, this team could get scarier because we've seen this team go do exactly what it did, lose 1 game in the NBA Finals, three games. They lost to Cleveland and Miami as well. But, you know, a very dominant run. Some will call an all-time historic type of run. And if you're telling me Jason Tatum is going to show up and play like the normal Jason Tatum he is in the finals, if you get back to that, or in the Eastern Conference Finals when you go up against Giannis and the Bucks, you know, I think this team could be very scary, right? This team showed what it could do without their number 1 superstar, playing like their number 1 superstar, where you had other guys just step up and elevate your game. You know, one of the big things we did talk about is the depth pieces of this team. Last year you had 9 to 10 players who can go out there and give you buckets, you know what I'm saying? Who can give you points off the bench. I'm not sure who they kept around and who they didn't, but I'm assuming they probably kept around some of those guys on those little veteran minimum deals. Peyton Pritchard's another good bench piece that they have already extended for the future, so they have him for another year or 2. But again, I think if any team has the roster to go back to back, and I know we said this about Denver because mainly, Denver, Jamal Murray was hot in the playoffs and Jokic is Jokic. But I think if any team with this type of roster has a chance to do it, it's got to be these guys. And as much as I hate the Celtics, I don't want to see them do that, obviously. I just think the upside of the Boston Celtics when Jason Tatum is playing like a top 5, top 8 NBA player, can be really scary for a lot of teams. And especially because that East is not so deep. You're hearing questions about Jimmy Butler. Does he really, his efforts in the regular season, always putting his team in a bad position when it comes to the playoffs because you got to go through the best teams first, So there's just a lot of question marks in the East, right? And then also if you add the addition of KP being healthy, right, which is something I just kind of glanced over right now, but you get a healthy KP through the playoffs, you get Jason Tatum at a top 5, top 8 NBA player level throughout the playoffs and can be able to carry that into the finals. It's going to be a very scary team because this 5-man lineup was the best 5-man lineup in the NBA last year. It wasn't even close. And then even the moments you've seen KP in the finals, he's just a unicorn. He was the first unicorn in the NBA. He's a mismatch demon for a lot of people. He'll shoot right over you because you're too short. He's 7 foot tall. So there's just so much to like about this team, and the fact that everybody can go out there and shoot the ball. KP can give you that 5-out spacing, that 5-out lineup that you want to run, and defensively, he's a great rim protector. I mean, this team is just, again, so scary. You have a couple role players, maybe you get some stuff from the young guys that you've drafted these past couple years, like Jordan Walsh last year. So I think this team genuinely has the best chance to repeat compared to any of the last 5 NBA champions that we've seen.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, it's funny because if you actually look diving into just the roster of all the teams in the NBA that are competitive, there's a championship formula that every single GM and every single NBA team goes with. You need your superstar, right? You need your supporting superstar, a guy that if your superstar isn't showing up, they can still show up. You have a big boy center that is very good at defense, but can also contribute offensively. And then the other 2 spots on your team are filled with guys who can either a 3-and-D guy or a pure defensive guy, and then a guy who can also get buckets and play defense well. And if we're talking about this, right, they have Drew Holiday, great defender. That's your defensive scorer. You know what I mean? Like he can score points if he needs to. He averaged like 12 points a game last year, which wasn't really great on his part, but he doesn't really have to score. But there's their lockdown defender right there. Derek White, right, is that other guy that's a good defender and scorer. Jalen Brown, me personally, either Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum switch off the roles of supporting superstar and superstar. Either one of them, it's either one of them any given night. Either Brown's dropping 30, they're both dropping 30. If Tatum's not showing up, Jalen Brown's showing up. And then they have their center, Kristaps Porzingis, 7-foot guy, great at defense, gets a ton of blocks, and can also produce offensively. So that's their formula. That's the starting lineup. And to put that to also put that in like perspective, you go to another team like the Thunder, right? Same formula, same exact formula that they're trying to show up, right? SGA, their superstar, supporting superstar that they're developing right now. Jalen Williams, who's averaging at least 18 to 20 plus, he can get into that range. Lou Dort, their pure defensive 3-and-D guy, right? Giddey was the only part of that thing that didn't really fit a role that this kind of championship formula is circulating around the league. And they traded Giddey for, guess what? Caruso. Another defensive guy, a pure defensive guy who can also give you points too. And then they have Chet, another 7-foot big guy who can contribute sometimes offensively, but who's going to give you those blocks in there. And he's going to be his defensive prowess is just there. And then off the bench, the huge thing is like young guys contributing off the bench and maybe 1 or 2 key veterans, right? So the Celtics have Al Horford, who's very, very underrated. And then you always have an absolute pure shooter coming off the bench. So for the Celtics, that's Sam Hauser. He's an absolute dot from deep, right? Sam Hauser. And for like the Thunder, right? That's Isaiah Joe. That's their pure shooter, Isaiah Joe, coming off the bench, right? And that's kind of like one of those guys that comes in and he'll come off the bench, or maybe sometimes he'll get a spot start and he'll just hit those threes. If he gets hot, it's a great thing to see, right? They have other guys like Xavier Tillman, who's another one of those guys who's like a bigger, like fuller forward who can play defense really well, but he's going to get those putbacks and things like that. And then a young guy like Jordan Walsh, who I think will probably might sneak into a bench spot next year. And like this championship formula is like what every single team is trying to move towards. Like these guys where like if you compare each team, you can compare one guy to another guy and their role on the other team. The only team that kind of hasn't like super fit this kind of role was the Nuggets. The Nuggets were kind of like one of the deviations from that aspect. But like I mean the Timberwolves are trying to get there with like their role players and the same thing around there. And like it's exciting to watch because it's like everyone like all the GMs in the NBA are so just meticulous about their matchups that are going to be in the playoffs and also during the regular season. They see guys who teams pick up and they're like, okay, what's a guy that I can pick up that's going to be exactly like that, that's going to fit that role, right? That like the Mikal Bridges, like the Knicks picking up Mikal Bridges, boom, there's the guy that's going to play defense and he's going to go in there. Oh, Giannonobi, he's the other defensive guy on their team. Brunson is their superstar, you know what I mean? They have Julius Randle in there, who's a good four. Like, and then I mean Mitchell Robinson, is he on the Knicks? I don't even know who the Knicks center is, but like
he's
like,
their only one right now, as of right now.
Yeah,
He's like the guy.
So
and then
like that's what I mean when it
Achua.
comes to like championship teams, and like it's just cool because like the Celtics, they just man, they mesh so well. They mesh so well. Like one guy's not doing good, it's okay. The rest of the team picks them up. You know what I mean? Like Tatum's playoffs, absolutely horrible, man. Watching him like celebrate like them winning a finals trophy, it's like you know that one group mate who doesn't do anything in the group project.
Right?
Like it was literally like that type of energy. Like you'd see him like maybe lead the team in scoring like the last game, but like his efficiency shooting and stuff like that was just absolutely horrid. And like, but it's nice for him because he has such great supporting pieces that it doesn't matter. And like since he's considered one of like the bigger names on the team, he's going to get a lot of the love either way. So do I see them repeating? I think like, yeah, I can 100% see it. Like on a percentage, on a scale of like 1 to 10, if I'm thinking of like repeating for them right now, I'm at like a 6 or a 7 in probability because out of the East, I mean, besides the 76ers, right? That'll be fun to watch, but I don't really see anybody just like competing so hard with them in the East. Like the West is literally so competitive.
Yeah.
Like so competitive. The West is going to be like cutthroat in the playoffs. Like the 10 seed, the play-in, all the way to the number 1 seed. Like it's anyone's game in the West next year, and it's gonna be trial by fire. You know what I mean? Whoever makes it out of the West, right? We didn't see that kind of with the Mavericks were kind of just like leaning on Luka and Kyrie. They didn't really have an identity, sorta, but they just kind of made it work. And then the role players for the Mavericks just
PJ Washington, baby,
greatest players in the NBA for like a short period of time. So they had a lot of things go right for them to be able to make the finals. But next season, whoever comes out of the West, whoever competes, if the Celtics come out of the East, the Celtics are going to be facing a team that's going to have gone through at least the Timberwolves or the Nuggets or the Thunder or like the Timberwolves.
They're going to be doing
like
a dogfight.
They're going to be the team that comes out of the West is going to be a team that is tough and had to go through a ton of competition to get to the finals. And so they're going to be ready. And like the Celtics, I think they'll have to eventually go through the 76ers. Hopefully the 76ers mesh well.
Just health.
Maybe the Knicks ish, but we'll see. But yeah,
I have so much faith in the Knicks.
Yeah. Well, it'll be exciting to watch, but I mean, like the Celtics have just been dominant. Like they're one of those teams where like the Warriors back when they won like 70 something freaking games when they were crazy, like we see them being dominant and like it's a norm. Like we're not like, you know, like it's a normal thing. Like we don't get like impressed when the Celtics like beat someone by like 30 or whatever. Like I don't think a lot of people were impressed that the Celtics won the finals this year. I really don't. I don't think there were people that were like, wow, the Celtics won the finals. That is such a shocker. No, it's kind of like they were the 1 seed. They were going in kind of like if they get to the finals, everyone's kind of like, okay, they got to the finals. That was kind of expected. And then they won it and it's like, okay, like, you know.
Yeah. Being a Lakers fan, obviously I don't want to see Celtics at 18th. So there was a little bit of bias in me where I was like, you know what, Mavericks going to go out here and dominate. Doesn't matter who they got. They're just going to have a meltdown. But obviously it didn't happen. But, you know, speaking about the Knicks, right, because that's one of the teams we're going to be talking. Hold on, my shit just tweaked. Give me a sec. I had to fix that. Sorry. But discussing the Knicks, talking about teams contending in the East, I did want to put out, because I almost forgot about this, was Jalen Brunson, right? He just got a 4-year extension, $156.5 million extension, $113 million less guaranteed than what he's eligible to receive. Like, to me, obviously this is a win now move for the New York Knicks, right? They're kind of trying to build. I mean, you just invested a lot of draft picks in Mikal Bridges to help compete in the East, to compete with a team like Boston, right? You have that superstar, that Jalen Brunson guy, who I'm very high on Jalen Brunson. I think he, if not, is like fringe top 10 NBA, like 10 to 12. I could see him being in that area. But when he gets to the playoffs, he's a guy you can trust. He performs better when the lights are bright. You're going to have Julius Randle coming back, praying he has good health, his ability to rebound and still score, right? You don't need him to be the best scorer, the number one option, or even the number two option, right? And then you're really buying into this defensive presence. You added Mikal Bridges. You brought back OG Anunoby to where you were a team that was, 19-3 before OG got hurt. That's when after you traded for him, you just extended OG Anunoby for a 5-year maxed contract, right? This team is here, and now you got a guy like Josh Hart who can be coming off the bench. Dante DiVincenzo, another guy who can possibly be coming off the bench. Deuce McBride, who you've seen flashes of. You do have to answer that center situation, because as of right now, you're looking at Precious Achua and Mitchell Robinson, right? Who's been a huge health concern, right? But I mean, Jalen Brunson, I seen it over social media. Everyone's like, build this man a statue, bro, blah, blah, blah. Josh Hart even said, we're going to drown this man in honey. And, because obviously what he did was, it's just unheard of, right? To see a superstar take that big of a pay cut, it's just you don't see it. You don't see it often at all. He clearly wants to win a championship and compete. So now I'm not sure what their cap situation looks like, but him taking a pay cut of the future, I mean, I gotta assume possibly some big moves can be made going forward, but again, that's another team you have to look out for. Jalen Brunson has set the tone. This is you just use 5 first-round picks to get Mikal Bridges. This is a team that is trying to compete, trying to win right now, right? It's trying to compete in the East. It's trying to compete with the 76ers and Embiid. It's trying to compete with the healthy Bucks, right? You still need to go out there and get another center who, whether they might trade for somebody or, sign somebody on a minimum, whatever. But, so you got to answer that question in that part of your roster. But I do like the Knicks going forward. I think the Knicks, I don't think the offensive firepower is as good as Boston, but I think defensively and with what Tom Thibodeau brings to this team, I can see the Knicks being a problem for the Boston Celtics because of that defensive energy that they have and the relentless effort. A guy like Josh Hart who's going to come off the bench and can give you a triple-double. It's just the energy for this team and the continuity and the atmosphere for this New York Knicks team. I mean, I like them better than Milwaukee at this current moment based on depth alone. Milwaukee's got some stuff to figure out. I mean, you got some older veteran pieces. Brook Lopez looks like he's kind of dying down in his career. Chris Middleton, another guy who is just a big health concern. You haven't really got that same Chris Middleton since you won a championship, So there's a lot of questions to answer about a lot of these other teams, but I do like the New York Knicks competing. And what are your thoughts on Jalen Brunson taking a pay cut like this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember the last time a superstar ate his ego and took a pay cut like that. I mean, it's pretty crazy to me. I was like, I know they were rumors and stuff that he'd do it and stuff like that. I didn't actually think it would happen, but it did happen, and in a big way. It wasn't just $1 million or just restructuring or whatever. It was a substantial amount of money, and it was
Crazy.
very, very selfless of him to do that for his team. I feel like the city of New York just owes him, dude. New York City, even after that, they need to understand that this guy just sacrificed over $100 million just to let the team actually stay afloat after all the additions that they've added.
He was about to be a $50 million a year player after what he did.
Yeah, and this this Knicks team is going to be so awesome to watch. They're going to have Brunson, Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges right in the starting lineup with Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson, who will probably end up being their starting center. You're going to have 3 huge guys coming off the bench: Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, and Miles McBride. The only thing, so those 3 guys, that's 8 men. That's great coming off the bench. Those 3 guys already great. I don't know who they're going to put as a backup center. Yeah, you got Precious in there. He's more of a power forward center-ish combo. I think he's a little small to be playing, but I mean, they can go small ball with 3 guards. Hart, DiVincenzo, and McBride are all guards. So, I mean, it would make sense if they wanted to go small ball whenever they go to their bench. But a huge thing for me too is like when we're talking about like meshing, they're gonna have with Julius Randle coming back, Jalen Brunson like averaging 30, right? Mikal Bridges obviously averaging like 20. They're gonna have three different guys who are averaging 20 plus points, and Brunson almost averaging 30. So going into next season, that's not going to happen. They're not going to have three guys averaging 20 plus points. I don't think that's going to happen, especially with Anunoby obviously averaging like 14 or 15. And then DiVincenzo also averaged 15. Like that's already averaging over like, what they're probably going to score a game. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be, hopefully they mesh well, especially with Mikal. I think Mikal, if you're going to like try to mesh with someone and for it to work out, Mikal's that perfect guy because he's more of like a 3-and-D player. But with the Nets, he was kind of forced to bring on like a bigger role than he needed to because obviously the Nets suck. Let's be real. So Mikal Bridges was like that guy. So he kind of just like was forced to kind of like he was taking the ball up a lot and like dribbling and like finishing a lot in the lane and in the paint and stuff, which kind of improved his game. Like he got a lot better, but it's like on a team like with Brunson and Julius Randle and OG Anunoby, like he's not, and Dante DiVincenzo, he's not going to have to do stuff like that. So he's going to get kind of into a more comfortable role where he'll be like a supporting player, which will be perfect. And it's going to be exciting just watching OG and Mikal just like on the same defense. Like that's absolutely insane. Like, yeah, that's crazy to think about. But yeah, I mean, I feel like just addressing like the center position, getting maybe another like really good center. I know they drafted like a random center in the second round this year, who's like almost 7 foot. I think he's like 6'11", out of I forgot what college he went to. If he even went to college, I don't think he went to college. I think he's like a foreign player.
It's all right. Second round picks. Who cares, man?
Yeah, but and then so yeah, it'll be exciting to watch them. I know out of the East too. I mean, if we're talking like East teams, I'm trying to think like teams who would be competitive. I guess like the Cavs re-signed Donovan Mitchell. I just don't feel like they're still like there yet to compete with like the 76ers or the Knicks. They don't have enough firepower. Another team that I think could be a little sneaky-ish, maybe the Orlando Magic, depending on like the steps that like Banchero does, but they have like a pretty good team there with like Suggs, Wagner, Fultz. They've got Jed Howard's pretty good. Anthony Black coming off the bench. They've got Cole Anthony, Paulo Banchero. So they have like, they have the pieces there. It'll just be exciting to watch how like, they mesh and things like that. And then like who else? The Pacers. And I don't know. I feel like
I'm not high on the Pacers. I'm not high on the Pacers.
I love Tyrese Halliburton, but I feel like when it comes to like, I think he's a little overrated. I feel like the beginning of the season, Tyrese Halliburton was an absolute menace. Like he was amazing. Like he was dropping like 30, 40 with like 10 plus assists. And then he got hurt and then he just like dropped off after that. He was like barely like scoring like maybe 20 a game and stuff. He was still like, he's a great passer and things like that. But like, they just don't have enough guys right now. Like they've got Halliburton and Miles Turner. They've got Pascal Siakam, which is pretty good. Those are their three guys. But then after that, they don't have a lot of great supporting pieces. They have Mathurin, who's like extremely inconsistent, but he's extremely inconsistent. But when he's on. He's exciting to watch. They've got Obi Toppin, which isn't. He's Obi Toppin. Andrew Nemhard was pretty good for a little bit. They've got Jerice Walker. Yeah. TJ McConnell too, who played pretty well. They've got James Wiseman too. Forgot about that. Johnny Furphy, who they just drafted, so we'll see how he does. But yeah, I mean, like they have the pieces. I just don't think it's enough firepower to like just compete as much as like the East. Just they like a lot of the bigger teams got better. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and then talking about the Knicks and like that small ball 5 lineup is, I mean, Julius Randle can play the 5. Right, like he did that when Mitchell Robinson was out, when Jalen Brunson first got there, and he was giving you 10, 11 boards a game. He could rebound, right, and he could still score. And I think he can kind of fit that 5-out style offensive center that you need. A guy who can shoot, a guy who can rebound, a guy, you know what I'm saying? So he's capable of doing that. And if he's okay with taking a step back on the offensive side of things, I think this team can get very scary, especially when you talk about the East. There's just not a lot of teams that I sit here and I'm like, yeah, that's a great team. That's a team I'm scared of. I'm still not scared of Indiana. I'm still not worried about Milwaukee, although I know it's Giannis, right? But they just have no sort of depth. There's a lot of question marks on that team, right? So I'm not worried about them. The Cavs, again, another team. I'm not worried about that two small guard lineup. I'm just not. Every time it gets to the playoffs, we see constant issues, So I'm not worried about any of that stuff. So I do like the Knicks going forward. We'll see how it plays out. We'll definitely see what happens and how everything plays out. But another trade that I did want to discuss today is obviously the DeMar DeRozan getting traded to the Sacramento Kings, ends up signing a sign and trade 3 years, $76 million contract in a 3-team deal where the Spurs end up getting Harrison Barnes for some, contract passing off. And then the Bulls end up getting Chris Duarte, and 2 second-round picks. And give me your thoughts on this DeMar DeRozan trade.
Yeah, I think the Spurs won this trade. I'm being honest. So I'll be honest. I love that. I love that the Kings are trying to, like bring in someone like DeMar DeRozan. Obviously, DeMar is a great player. If I'm being honest, though, like they gave him a lot of money. The Kings kind of like, I don't know what DeRozan's gonna like be for them. You know what I mean? Just like what role is he gonna kind of fit in? Because I know they just lost. Buddy Hield to the Warriors, obviously. Either lost them or traded them. I don't remember, but I just don't see where DeRozan's going to fit because DeRozan isn't really a shooter, right? He shoots like 30, maybe low 30% from 3. That's what Buddy Hield was literally the best at, was shooting. They're going to have Sabonis. They're going to have De'Aaron Fox. They're going to have Keegan. Who else? I'm trying to think of who else.
Kevin Huerter, Keontae Ellis.
Oh yeah, Huerter, yeah, and Malik Monk too, right? Is he still?
Oh yeah, he's still there. Sixth man of the year, second and sixth man of the year.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I'm kind of interested to see like what DeRozan's going to bring to them because I mean, the dude is 34 years old, and they signed him to a 3-year deal, so they're going to have him until he's like 37. Which is pretty crazy. He's going to be very old at 37. Obviously, he still averaged like 24 last year. So I mean, he's still doing pretty good. But with a lineup that's so fast and so young, like the Kings, like with De'Aaron Fox, and like Malik Monk, Sabonis, Keegan Murray. My thing is like I just don't know how he's going to fit this offense and what because I also talked to a couple of my friends that are Kings fans, and then like just looking at Kings fans forums, and they're happy that the Kings got someone bigger, but they're like what is he gonna kind of do for us? You know what I mean? That sort of thing. And like I don't know. It'll be exciting to watch because obviously, I mean, in the West, with everyone in the West getting like a guy, like a bigger guy on their team, and just keep adding. The Kings probably felt a little bit of pressure to like, hey, we need to stay a little bit competitive. We need to go out and like get a guy. Do I think that they gave up much? No, they literally gave up nothing for him.
Like, and DeMar DeRozan is a tradable piece. Like he's not going to be tradable to a contending team, but he can give you some sort of youth and pieces, if it doesn't work out. But
I mean, talking about the trade too, like just more in depth. I mean, the Bulls kind of like they got Duarte. Duarte's like meh. He's like a meh role player. They got 2 second-round picks, which are always usually like meh, but it's kind of like pushing them more towards their thing where they're like rebuild and whatever. I'm shocked they didn't get a first-round pick at all for DeMar or like anyone like a younger player that's like means something, I guess. Duarte's like older now. I think we've seen his ceiling already. Or his
it's only because it was a sign and trade. If it wasn't a sign and trade, they wouldn't have. They could have gotten more, but it's just because it was a sign and trade. Because these guys, the Bulls at the deadline could have had 6 first-round picks if they moved out the guys that were that were wanted at the deadline. Like Caruso, DeRozan, Levine, even Drummond. Like you could have had a handful of picks back, but I mean, hey. At least you're finally committing to the rebuild, the Cooper Flag era,
Yeah, right. And the Spurs getting Harrison Barnes, I don't think like many people are talking about it enough. Harrison Barnes is like a guy that averages at least like 15 every single season. I think he was kind of down this last year because just the Kings didn't play him as much. But he's that veteran guy that the Spurs needed because their team is just so young, man. So they got Chris Paul, They just got Stephon Castle, right? They're two guards. They've got Wemby. They just got they're a starting veteran forward in Harrison Barnes who can drop 15. Sometimes he even randomly drops like a 30 bomb. He can
Every
get
once
like
in a
mid
while.
20s, low 20s, things like that. They have Keldon Johnson. They have every single young guy that they have that can come off the bench. Like I really love this situation that like Harrison Barnes is in with the Spurs. I love it. I think he's going to be a perfect role piece for them, and he's going to be a perfect plug and play. He's just going to work out in San Antonio, and it made me really happy to see that because I haven't seen him kind of like ball out since his time with like the Mavericks a really long time ago when he like averaged like 20 a game in like 2017 2016 era ish. But yeah, I think the Spurs did really well in this trade. I don't even know what they gave up. Maybe they gave up the 2 seconds, or maybe they gave up. I don't even know who they gave up,
They
or
gave
if they
up a
just got
second. I think they gave up a
okay a
second.
second, yeah.
Yeah. Which
Which
I
like
mean,
I would 100%. I mean, trade a second round pick for a guy like Harrison Barnes. Like if I can draft someone with a second round pick and they average 15 a game, like dude, that's an
it's a
absolute
win,
win.
right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of what I think about the DeMar trade. I kind of just don't know where DeMar is going to fit into the Kings offense. But I mean, if he meshes, he meshes, and they have another superstar on the team, superstar, star, whatever. Like, I don't know what people are labeling DeMar as. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, DeMar DeRozan, I know the fit is not there, and I know it's not ideal. Because you heard the Kings be in conversations even last year for Pascal Siakam at the deadline. You heard them be in the discussion for a guy like Lauri Markkanen. You needed to make a move. From going from a team that was the sixth seed just 2 years ago, one of the highest scoring offenses in basketball at that moment. You took a little step back this year, didn't even make the playoffs. You made the play in, you end up losing to the Pelicans, right? But I mean, I just feel like you had to make a move to stay relative. You don't want to just continue to go on a downward spiral and kind of go like, oh, we'll make a move next year when we have a couple more picks and things like that. And I just think this was a situation where, because every situation DeMar DeRozan's been, he is a floor raiser. He's gonna at least guarantee you a couple more wins. He's gonna guarantee you offensive production. I mean, he's been such a consistent scorer his entire career, right? Yes, I understand that mid-range magic that he does, but he is one of the most clutch players in the NBA, statistically. That fourth quarter, the clutch player of the year award, all that stuff. He is a very clutch player, which is something you needed, other than De'Aaron Fox. There's nobody else on that lineup that I'm going to sit here confidently, other than Keegan Murray, that I'm going to say this guy's going to go out there and be able to hit a game-winning shot, and DeMar DeRozan's that guy, in like, for example, when you lost Malik Monk, not having another ball handler, not having another guard to go out there and help De'Aaron Fox, right? Nobody off the bench could really do that. Keontae Ellis, not ready for that role. Davion Mitchell wasn't ready for that role. And now you get a guy like DeMar DeRozan, who's more than capable of playmaking, right? So on those nights you're missing that Malik Monk, you're missing De'Aaron Fox, you're missing Keegan Murray or whatever. He's going to be able to be there and give you productive scoring, efficient scoring. He's going to be able to play make defensively. I understand the issues offensively in a starting lineup with De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis. Obviously, you like to see two shooters be out there, possibly Kevin Huerter and Keegan Murray, who both had a down year, So I think if you get Keegan Murray and Kevin Huerter to have a better year from shooting from three this year, you're looking at a good team. Because again, DeRozan is going to be a floor raiser, right? So I feel like you're going to be guaranteed a couple more wins, possibly a 7 seed, pushing for the 6 seed, because there are some teams in that range where there's going to have some things to figure out, Phoenix specifically, they have those three great superstars, but nobody's really worried about them because the mesh is just not there. Your role players are not. You don't have any role players. You don't have any depth on that team. And so I think this was an okay move for them, because I mean, paying $25 million for a year for a guy like DeMar DeRozan was, to me, a steal, because Chicago, if they kept him, was going to pay him 40. So that's a $15 million pay cut. And from what I've heard, reading resources, social media, all that stuff, is that his contract is all-star, like, incentives based on his production. So if he wins awards, all NBA, things like that, he'll get more money towards his contract. So there's some stuff like that, because it's not fully guaranteed, which I think they can work around. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, the Kings have 2 more picks that they will have access to trading next offseason. You could take him, use those picks to move around and make a splash, and be competitive. But for the Kings itself, you just needed to make a move to stay competitive, to show that you're still trying to win games, because the Kings have such a bad history of losing. You don't want to go back to there. You don't want to let your fans think you're okay with being the 10 seed, being the 9 seed. You've spent years and decades of losing. You finally had something to look forward to these past 2 years, and now you need to make a move to make yourself more competitive, to continue winning games, to not take a step back. And if you can just take a step forward, win a couple more games, put yourself in a better playoff position than you did last year, I think it's a win, because you could still get out here, develop some younger guys who have take some bigger leaps in the future. You have access to some draft capital, obviously, to make some moves and make a splash. But I definitely think that, for the Bulls, all right, you're going into rebuild mode. But for the Kings, this is definitely it's going to be beneficial. How successful will it be off the rip day one? I'm not too sure. These guys need some time to mesh well. Obviously Derozan not being a very great 3-point shooter. And De'Aaron Fox with his issues, sometimes shooting the three. So we'll definitely see how this all meshes together and plays out. And then with the first football topics discussion of the day, I did want to talk about the Colorado Buffs. I mean, Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, Deion Sanders have been in the headlines this entire offseason, all spring, all training camp, the Big 12 media day. And I was listening to Colin Cowherd actually on the way here. He was talking about Colorado. He was talking about all the talking they've been in, quote unquote, we are everybody's Super Bowls, the kind of image that he's building up for himself, right? And he compared him to a Johnny Manziel, a Baker Mayfield, a guy who had attitude issues in college, right? Johnny Manziel, Heisman Trophy winner, great player, right? Was drafted in the first round, but even coming into the draft, the reason he fell so much was because of his attitude issues, right? And so, and then he ended up in a poor situation on the Cleveland Browns. Baker Mayfield, again, bad attitude issues, but what team took a chance on him? The Cleveland Browns. But, so me personally, I think this could hurt him negatively, right? Because you're projected to be a first overall pick, one of the first picks of next year's draft. You're projected to be the first quarterback taken off the board. But coming into this offseason after having only 4 wins, right? And you lost you were like 2-8 in your conference last year, so obviously bottom of your conference last year in the Pac-12. You're going into I would say a tougher division in the Big 12, a lot of different teams who can score a lot. You're going to be in there with Oklahoma's in SEC now, I forgot. But so we'll definitely see how that plays out. But to me, I think this could definitely hurt Shedeur Sanders, based on the way he talks. And even Colin said that, this could be a situation where if you continue to talk as much as you talk and to underperform, it could really hurt your draft value as a player. And then, you've seen it before. You've seen teams not take players because of attitude issues, because of, they're off the field. They're just their persona, and me personally, I would hate to see that happen to a guy like Shedeur, because you're putting a lot of pressure on him. Deion Sanders being his dad, Deion Sanders tagging people on Twitter, talking to people on Twitter, saying, "Yo, my son's gonna be a first round pick. What's your gonna be? What's your son doing right now?" So there's just so much good and bad media and noise around his name, and I would hate to see a guy like Shedeur, because obviously, just going to be like Bronny James coming into the NBA. His dad was such a superstar, one of the greatest cornerback to ever play the game, with so much hype. He talks a lot, to see his son come in with a lot of pressure on him and him kind of taking over Deion's persona. And I think it could, possibly hurt him in the long run and in his NFL career.
Yeah, I don't know. They just give me a headache, man. Like the whole drama, when we're talking about like football and like college football, NFL football, guys who like just make it about themselves when it's really a team sport. There's like some guys that like are just really triggering and just really like just frustrating. The whole like the Brandon Ayuk saga and the whole like taking to social media. Oh, I'm done with the Niners. Yeah. the whole like the attention, like the like when they want attention and they just want like the spotlight and they want everything to be about them. Hey, look at me. I want the headlines. I want you to post about me. I want the rumors and stuff like that. It's annoying. And I remember, to quote like earlier, I think it happened either earlier last year, it happened in March. Dion said, he said they were talking about like Shadir and Travis Hunter and like the upcoming NFL draft in 2025. And I pulled up the quote, and Deion Sanders said, there are certain NFL cities that ain't going to happen. When he was talking about like, you know, where Shadir or Travis would get picked and stuff like that. And he said that the two of them will decide where they play. Right. So that whole thing kind of begs the question of like, if they get drafted to a team they don't like, are they going to refuse to sign? Are they going to force them to make a trade or whatever? Like, you know what I mean? That whole thing, like you would think, hey, you get drafted to the NFL, be grateful for the team that took the chance on you. You know what I mean? That sort of, because like, but like, no, like being raised by Dion and just the whole like persona and person, like Dion's a very like, he's a very out there person. He's very outgoing. But I mean, his play obviously backs him up and things like that. I feel like the whole Shadir saga it's just his dad. Like a lot of his like personality and stuff is just matched and like matching his dad. And I feel like he's not that guy. Like he's not that guy to be like Deion Sanders level confidence and like talking down to people and like talking about people the way he does. Like he talked about his teammate that left or whatever. And like, it's just like, it's weird to like see and like them like, you know, the whole like posting on your Snapchat to find like recruits and stuff and like all that. Like, it's just not the way that like people usually go about business and like just like in general, you know what I mean? It's a very immature. I feel like Shadir and Dion are extremely immature people. They're not mature. And like the whole attacking people on Twitter thing and all that, like that is so immature.
Like I do.
Cringy. Like it's like extremely cringe.
You're Deion Sanders, you know, like you're Deion Sanders. We know.
Yeah, you don't have to talk to people over Twitter, bro. But yeah, that's the whole thing where it's like, do I think this year is going to define obviously Shadir? We'll see. They're in the Big 12 now. They're going to play some actual like competitive teams. They played competitive teams last year and they sucked. Like they didn't win. Like they just didn't win. And like Shadir, obviously he had like really good stats, things like that. But also you could actively like see in some of the games where he's like being very cautious and being very like
hold on to the ball forever.
Make sure. Yeah, I need to make sure that like I don't throw an interception here. Instead of pushing down the field, maybe I don't. Maybe I take a check down or maybe I run the ball here. But it's going to be like things like that. Like, I mean, if you look at like how long he holds the ball in the pocket and like the way he runs and stuff, obviously, of course, the first thing they're going to do is blame it on the offensive line, right? Like,
which was bad. Don't get me wrong. Which was bad.
Oh, no, it was bad. It was bad.
I understand.
Yeah, it was bad. But at the same time, like he was holding the ball a lot longer than he needed to, too.
100%.
And like, we'll see this year how he pans out and how they play against the Big 12. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's like another Spencer Rattler situation where like Spencer Rattler was so hyped up and he was supposed to be like the number one pick or whatever. And then he got replaced, obviously, when he like didn't like, you know, produce like he was doing before. So, I mean, we'll see. It's going to be kind of, I mean, it'll be exciting to watch. Obviously they play Baylor, so it'll be cool to watch him play Baylor here at the stadium. I'll be there to make sure, but like the whole, like, man, he would just do it. Just be, he wouldn't be a polarizing player. Like the whole thing, the bad thing about guys is when they become polarizing in college, even before they get to an NFL team, they become extremely unlikable. And people who become extremely unlikable, they're not going to have fan support when something bad happens. You know what I mean? If 100%. Something bad happens, they're going to get absolutely dogged. But if you have a really nice guy who's like extremely respectable and who isn't the whole, like, I'm going to talk the talk, even if I don't back it up, I'm still going to talk the talk. If you have a guy that like just goes in, gets the job done, doesn't talk, if something bad happens to him, right? Or if he isn't producing or performing the way that maybe the fans are seeing, they're going to be like, it's okay. Like, you know, well, it's whatever. But when you hype yourself up like Shadir and Dion's hyping up Shadir, if he doesn't produce, everyone's going to be against you. And it's sad because he's so young.
Right. Then the thing is, it's already happening. Like,
Yeah,
it's already
exactly. And they
happening
haven't even
last year
played.
because
Yeah.
exactly because even last year during some of the games, everyone was talking about, oh, he's supposed to be a first round talent, and then everyone's out here tagging Dion and all these guys and like, yo, do you not remember this game, all these different situations where he's losing games, he's holding onto the ball for too long and causing sacks, and just it's just way too much drama for a team that's only had 4 wins last year, and I get it. Deion Sanders, he is the brand. That is his name. He's gonna talk regardless of what's going on. He is Deion Sanders. He's done that his entire career, even before he got drafted. So I just hope it doesn't turn into a whole Johnny Manziel like situation where you are a good player, you have a chance to be great, but your off the field issues and your attitude, the way you look at yourself, just and then you get put in a bad situation because you're talented, you have the capabilities of being good, right? But then once you get there, you get put in a bad situation, you don't succeed, you don't thrive, and now, like you said, all of a sudden the backlash is going to be, yo, this guy was talking all this jazz that I'm a first round pick, I'm a top 5 pick, and I can't even win a game in the NFL once I get there, So I would hate to see something like that happen to him. But with that being said, I did want to get into the NFL. I did want to discuss. I want you to predict and give me your prediction for this next year NFL MVP, and then after that, I want you to give me a dark horse MVP candidate.
Mm-mm-mm. NFL MVP. Let me think. I'll throw a name out there. CJ Stroud.
All right, like it.
I'll say that. I mean, obviously AFC, the easy pick would be Mahomes, right? But that's kind of boring.
Yeah, don't do that.
With Xavier Worthy and Rishi Rice if he ever comes back, whatever. Um, I mean the Chiefs are going to be the Chiefs, obviously. But and the more I think about it, I mean, obviously it's probably going to be a quarterback award. And I'm trying to think. Joe Burrow's coming back. Do I think he has a chance? I mean, maybe, but I don't know. That like last season kind of just scared me a bit. Just the way he didn't produce like Joe Burrow. I mean, obviously like he was hurt and stuff, so he has a full off season to kind of get healthy and figure it out and stuff. But with I mean, what CJ Stroud did last year, obviously, I mean, maybe teams like kind of like step up this year against him, but I mean, they added a lot of firepower. They added a lot of weapons, and he's going to have a great run game this year compared to last year when he didn't have a run game at all. Um, and I mean, like the receivers that I mean, Tank Dell's coming back after his injury. Their receiving core is absolutely stacked with Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. Those
So
are
good.
three guys who technically, like Tank Dell was like kind of their number one receiver besides Nico Collins last year. Nico Collins obviously produced wide receiver one numbers. Diggs, obviously a wide receiver one. They've got Joe Mixon now, their running back, who is a Pro Bowler.
Dalton Schultz.
Um, Dalton Schultz, like that's literally like stacked. And they have Kenyon Green, who's coming back, who is, I believe, a first round pick that kind of like that was their first round pick for their offensive line, but he got hurt and he was out for the season last year. So they're getting all these guys. And then they obviously added to their defense too. They added Danielle Hunter, who's an absolute menace, who was like second in the NFL in sacks to TJ Watt. And then like Jimmy Ward, who is really good for the Niners. And then they got Jeff Okuda too, to kind of like solidify that like secondary with Jalen Petrie and then Derek Stingley, who Jalen Petrie and Derek Stingley are two absolute up and coming superstars. I mean, Derek Stingley played like 6 or 7 games last year and he ended with 4 interceptions. So, and then obviously they have defensive rookie of the year, Will Anderson.
Right.
So this team is going to be like really, really, really good. And like just talking about the defense when we're talking about CJ Stroud, I mean, it's going to be all about wins. Obviously, like not a lot of MVPs are going to be on horrible teams and they're going to win. They're usually 1 seeds or like, top of their division. So right. I think the Texans have a shot at being the 1 team in the AFC. The only thing is going to be like, CJ Stroud not going into a sophomore slump, which I can see happening. But, I think for me, it's going to be CJ Stroud. And then if I'm thinking NFL dark horse MVP, really, I'll throw out a name. I'll say Jared Goff. I feel like Jared Goff. So the 2 names that I like here are Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins. And I'll lean more towards Jared Goff because I know that the Lions are going to be really good. I mean, they have just a really good team and they made like the I mean, they made the NFC North championship, NFC championship, which is pretty crazy for the Lions. And I mean, just what he's been able to do with that team is pretty great. But they haven't made like a ton of crazy additions to their team this offseason. Their wide receiver core, besides Amon-Ra, is kind of a little shaky with like Jamison Williams, who we're kind of still waiting on to like break out.
Yeah, I've heard things from training camp that he's prepping for that jump to be a solid receiver.
Yeah, and if he makes a jump, they're going to be really good. And then they've got like a two-headed running back group that's like great with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I think Gibbs is going to take a step forward this season too, and he's going to be great. That offensive line is absolutely stacked. Kevin Zeitler, Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell, Graham Glasgow, Taylor Decker. Those are all stacked guys. They got Laporta at tight end too, who's an absolute star. So I think that I think they're going to do really, really well. And I can see Jared Goff kind of stacking. Jared Goff has been very consistent. Last year, he threw for 4,500 yards and 30 touchdowns, right? I think he was like second in the NFL in touchdowns, like top five in passing touchdowns and like second in passing yards, which is pretty crazy. Knowing that, they don't have like the weapons that other teams have. But I think Jared Goff is going to be one of those guys that he's going to stuff the stat sheet like he usually does, kind of like a Kirk Cousins, where Kirk Cousins they just naturally get a ton of passing yards every single game. And then if the Lions kind of just keep winning and winning and winning, I can see him as a dark horse for MVP. Do I think that he's going to win it?
No,
probably not.
Right.
I think there's a chance, and he would probably be my dark horse over Kirk Cousins.
Okay. I actually love that pick because I respect that about Goff, and I do agree that if you add one more like legitimate wide receiver too alongside St. Brown and Laporta, like that team could be very scary. Like their number 2 receiver last year was Josh Reynolds. Like he's not even on the team no more, because he had those 2 drops in the NFC Championship game. But so I love that. But my MVP going into next year, or my prediction is going to be Joe Burrow. And I understand the whole, he's been injured. He's missed a lot of time last year, but I think this is the year for him. I mean, you got T. Higgins to sign the franchise tag, right? You've been the guy, in my eyes, the number 2 quarterback in the league since you've came into the league. You've been the guy who you beat Mahomes. You're the only team to really give Mahomes problems. You went to the Super Bowl. You had one of the worst O-lines in the NFL. You had 7 sacks. You went through all that stuff. Rah, rah, rah. We expected you to continue that dominance last year, and it didn't happen. Obviously, you got hurt. The team did great without you in your absence. Jake Browning did a great job. Some people would say a system quarterback type job, like Brian Callahan was the system and benefited Joe Burrow and made Joe Burrow better than what he truly is, right? So there's a lot of criticism that you have to answer. You're running this thing an entire back other than Joe Mixon, right? Running back problems. You have to figure that out. But, I mean, listen, you got T. Higgins, who some are regarding as a wide receiver 1 on most teams. You have Jamar Chase, who's a top 5, top 8 receiver at worst, So I just think Joe Burrow, with what they have to prove and what the goal is for them, right? They are all into this win now mode, right? And this is it. This is the year for the Cincinnati Bengals. These other teams are just going to continue to get better. The NFC is continuing to build and get better this year. The Chiefs are arguably at their worst offensive state this year and in the last year as well than they've been in the past. Like, this is it. Your biggest threat in the AFC is going to be the Baltimore Ravens, right? A team that we all think should have beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, right? If they ran the ball more. So this is going to be the year for Joe Burrow. I think he's going to have a really comeback player of the year type year, MVP numbers. We already know how talented he is, especially there is going to be no true running back week 1, right? So I expect this to play through Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is going to be healthy to start the season, which means his legs is going to be fine. He's going to be able to move in the pocket, which we didn't see last year to start the season. So I expect a huge MVP type season from Joe Burrow going forward and a dominant team as a whole. And then for Dark Horse MVP, I mean, this is a huge Dark Horse long shot, right? But I got Bijan Robinson for Dark Horse MVP, right? Okay. Right, because we already seen how talented he is last year, what he did on a team with no quarterback, where they're stacking the box, right? You bring in Kirk Cousins, who, like you said, is going to put up great numbers for you, is going to be a consistent quarterback regardless of the situation he's in, right? And that just allows everything else to open up for you. And one of the biggest things for Bijan Robinson going into the season is that the head coach, he emphasized the point of getting Bijan Robinson the ball in the passing game, getting him involved more, which is something that I think they kind of fell off early on in the season. After the first couple weeks, they stopped getting him involved in the backfield, throwing the ball, swing routes, swings, whatever, because he's a great route runner for a running back. I like his odds against any linebacker in the league. I think he's a Christian McCaffrey 2.0 type back, right? I think he's capable of that. And so I think he's going to be very involved in this offense. He is the motor, the face of this offense in my eyes. And I think not only is the team going to rely on him to really show out, but I think he's going to be healthy, have another year under his belt, a new OC, a better game plan where he's more involved. And I expect an absolute huge year going into next year. And then the last topic of discussion of today's episode, I did want to discuss the Saquon Barkley situation, right? And you've got a lot of criticism and a lot of mixed emotions based on, I'm pretty sure you've seen it, the Hard Knocks clip where the Giants GM says, we're paying Daniel Jones $40 million a year. It's not the handoff to a 15 a year back, right? So kind of disrespecting Saquon Barkley a bit. And then he also said live on Saquon Barkley while he was on the phone saying that, you go out there, you go find an offer that you like. And if you like that offer, you come back to us and we'll tell you if we can match it, So a very, in my eyes, disrespectful move to somebody who, embraced the Giants culture when nobody else embraced it. From day one, this guy came in, gave you Rookie of the Year. He gave you elite top 5 running back vibes on a 4-12 team before you had Daniel Jones. While this team was god awful, you had no sort of hope. And then here comes Saquon Barkley, just giving you, the Giants fans, giving New York a reason to have pride in their team. So this was definitely, in my eyes, handled very poorly. The way the GM came out here and disrespected Saquon and not really trying to work something out with him truly, right? We basically picked Daniel Jones over Saquon Barkley, which to my eyes is obviously very disrespectful because Daniel Jones is Daniel Jones, right? Saquon Barkley, even though he's had his health issues and he hasn't looked the same behind with how this poor offense, right? But he is a generational talent. We all know that. His ability, I think he's going to absolutely flourish in Philadelphia. I expect Saquon Barkley to go in here with a motive, right? You go from one of the worst teams in the league to now being on one of the best teams in the league behind a great O-line. You're with Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert. Like, listen, you are in the best possible scenario for yourself. And I think this year, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be one of those teams that are going to get back to their roots, is going to get back to running the ball with emphasis and Saquon's ability to catch the ball at the backfield. I just think listen, this team is just going to be so dynamic with Saquon Barkley being a part of this team. He is a 3-down back. He's a guy who can turn, a little swing route into a 60-yard touchdown. He's just that good. He's that agile. He can run through you. He can make you miss. He can jump over you. He has all the tools in his tool belt. And this is another guy that I'm so happy that he finally was able to move on to a better situation, to a team that the ambition is Super Bowl. It's to win a Super Bowl. You just paid your quarterback a lot of money. You just invested in a running back. You just invested in both your receivers. It is time to go out here and win a Super Bowl. And alongside that, not only did we go out here and bring in Saquon Barkley, but we added Quinion Mitchell and what's the dude's name from Iowa? I can't remember. The white boy, right? Cooper DeJean, David. Cooper DeJean. So they invested a lot into winning now this year. So I think Saquon Barkley is going to be back in that discussion as a top 5 back in the league. I think he's in one of the best situations that running backs would dream of being in, with that much elite receiver talent around you and a great tight end in Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, looking at the Eagles roster, and just knowing their roster, they're going to be absolutely stacked. Their offensive line is great. They also picked up Paris Campbell too, who I think is really underrated. He's going to be that third guy for them besides A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. They've just got the formula of a team that has the ability to win the Super Bowl. I don't really see. I look at the Eagles and I don't see anyone where I'm that's a weakness on the team. Quarterback, you have Jalen Hurts. You're completely fine there. Saquon, last year they had DeAndre Swift, didn't they? And yes. I think that
he's still dude. Yeah. DeAndre Swift was so great last year in that offense. That just proves what Saquon's gonna do.
Yeah, and they have AJ Brown, obviously Devontae Smith. They added The only thing that was sus last year was their secondary, right, which kind of like pooped the bed. But I mean,
James
they added
Bradbury
Kenyon Mitchell. They have Darius Slay. They had Reed. They have Reed Blankenship. They also picked up C.J. Gardner Johnson too, and then
again.
Cooper DeJean.
Yep.
Which that secondary, like if I'm being real, that's like I think that's top 5 in the NFL. If I'm
Yeah.
being real, I mean obviously it depends on like how Kenyon does and how Cooper does, but even just Slay, Reed Blankenship, and C.J. Gardner Johnson, that those 3 are stacked right there. And then just adding the other 2, one of those guys isn't going to see the field because they're not going to have that many people obviously in the secondary at a time. But
Yeah.
and then they've Devin White too. They picked up
Yes.
Devin White as well,
Yes.
which is huge.
I
And then they
like
have
him.
Nakobe Dean coming back, who was hurt for most of the year last year. They've got Jordan Davis. They've got Jalen Carter, who's an absolute menace. Didn't they trade for Josh Sweat, or they signed Josh Sweat, who's a menace too? Bryce Huff, who's kind of
Yep.
like a underrated guy. He had double-digit sacks last year. They still have Brandon Graham too, who was a huge guy. He's older now, so he's not kind of like as relevant as he was before. But I mean, like that defense is stacked. Their offense
Oh,
stacked. So I mean, it's going to be exciting to watch the Eagles. I think they will probably be the team that comes out of the NFC.
yeah, and in my eyes, like you said about their Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, I think those were the 2 best corners in football, in college football last year, in this year's draft. Like them missing out on Terrion Arnold, I know the Lions got him, so I hope he works out well for the Lions case. But I mean, I think these are the 2 best cornerbacks in the draft. I think Quinion Mitchell is going to be that day one impact guy, from what I'm hearing in minicamp and how he is competing. Cooper DeJean, I think, again, I think he's going to be a great rotational piece. One of them is going to have to be a rotational piece because you got too many cornerbacks out there, right? But, Cooper DeJean is also capable of he's like a hybrid guy. He could also play a little bit of safety. He can kind of move around a little bit. So we'll definitely see how they use him. But I mean, I'm so excited for this team. Like you said, I mean, this team is a team that, at one point last season looked like the clear-cut Super Bowl favorites were 10-1, 11-1, and then ended up just falling off the second half of the year and collapsing in the playoffs. But nah, I mean, I'm so excited for this Philadelphia Eagles team. I hope Jalen Hurts can get back to playing respectable football. A lot of issues with that last year, but again, I'm so excited for this Philadelphia Eagles team going forward. But go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. Also, another thing too, I mean, that I like about the Eagles is just their running backs are stacked. Like they have Saquon now. They have Kenneth Gainwell, who's more than a serviceable backup. He's a really good pass catcher too. They also got Will Shipley, who was the starting running back for
For
Clemson.
Clemson, right?
And I really love Will Shipley. I mean, like obviously the running backs this year kind of like didn't really like they weren't like kind of like that people actually thought they were going to do. Like they weren't going to get drafted high, you know what I mean, and things like that. I was really high. The only 2 guys that I really liked were Corum and Will Shipley, and the Eagles got Will Shipley. Which did they need another running back besides Saquon and Kenneth Gainwell? No, absolutely not. But and then Blake went to the Rams, which is exciting to watch because it's going to be him and Kyron. But yeah, I'm really excited for the Eagles.
Yeah, and especially nowadays, you see a lot of running backs who are able to, like, from day one, be a capable player. Not saying they're going to get a high volume of snaps or anything like that, but running back is kind of like people believe nowadays you can find a running back in the 6th round, in the 5th round. So, and Will Shipley, again, like you said, was a great running back at Clemson. Clemson obviously had a down year, but he was capable of doing a lot of things, catching the ball at the backfield. So, and it just never hurts to, especially because Gainwell last year had a bit of injury issues last year. So it was kind of DeAndre Swift. So I think it was a great addition. But with that being said, hopefully everybody enjoyed today's podcast. Me and Seth I'm definitely going to be trying to be more active, consistently uploading. I know this last week I didn't upload at all. This is going to be the first episode of the week. I've had a lot of audio issues with my stuff, but don't worry, I'm fixing it up, working on it, upgrading some things. But with that being said, if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on post notifications. If you're watching this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you like the show, follow the show, give it a 5-star rating. It helps the algorithm. And then Seth, once again, I want to appreciate you for being on. And with that being said, we out.